Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another Inside the Birds special. It's our schedule and intel show where we go over every one of the Eagles' opponents, and we've done two shows already. I think this is number three. We will go through Eagles games 9 through 12 here, and this stretch is interesting. This is probably the hardest stretch or most intriguing stretch of all of them, and we're going to start in Week 10 against the Packers. Now, the Eagles come off their bye in Week 9. Which, you know what? That's a good thing. You're around the midseason mark to come off your bye. It's not too early. It's not too late. That's probably a good area. Nick Sirianni, Eagles head coach, including playoffs, is 3-0 against the Packers. All three were technically at home. Two in Philly, and that last game, which is awesome, in Brazil. And this is the first time that the Eagles will be on the road at Green Bay since December 6, 2020. So you're talking 5 years. So it's been a while there. It'll be interesting to see. It was Doug Peterson's last year. It'll be interesting to see how these guys react to being there in Green Bay. Let's get started with Green Bay's offense, what they're bringing to the table. So at running back, it's all about Josh Jacobs. Had a good year for them. It's about who's going to back him up. Well, A.J. Dillon obviously is gone. He's in Philly. And Marshawn Lloyd, unfortunately, he only played one game last season, and he didn't do anything. He just couldn't stay healthy. He had the worst luck in the world. 2 hamstring injuries, a hip injury. Then he had appendicitis. So it's just one of those things. They drafted him to be Josh Jacobs' backup and to be a third down back. And eventually he could start maybe when they move on from Jacobs, if they do, over the next couple of years. But they're going to learn a lot about him because he is finally healthy. Now, the floor is one of these, what we call balance 11, 12 personnel guys. It's run-based. It's the Shanahan system. He's committed to the run, and this would annoy me because there have been times, if you look at their pass target group, particularly at receiver, and you go, wow. You look at the receiver group, they're 4 deep, they're legitimate 4 deep, and they've had these 2 young tight ends that they like. Why aren't you throwing the ball more? But they're overcommitted to running the football when your running back is not Saquon Barkley. No offense to Josh Jacobs. He did very well for Green Bay. But when you've got this personnel that the Packers have at wide receiver and tight end, what am I talking about here? Now, Christian Watson, unfortunately, tore his ACL. We're going to assume he'll be back by midseason. He suffered his injury late last season. So there's a question about when he'll be back. Romeo Doubs on the final year of his deal. Jaden Reed is a really good slot. Matthew Golden. Now, he could run. He could flat out fly. I know there's some personnel people that I spoke to around the draft who thought that he should have been drafted in the first round. He's more of a second-round talent. He's probably going to get overdrafted for his speed, but he's a good football player. And they needed that. They needed somebody who could run badly. Dontavian Wicks is a talented receiver, good backup receiver. They brought in Mecole Hardman, who is not the same player he once was. And they have Bo Melton, who they signed off the Seahawks practice squad a couple of years ago. And one Preston Service has done a good job. So they're super deep at receiver. That's really not the issue. It's how you want to attack teams, in particular the Eagles, where we know the Eagles are not deep at corner. Okay, we know they're not. And now on the surface, they're not. Now we'll see what happens closer to the season. Does Howie add another veteran corner? Does he trade for one? How do the guys competing for the one outside job look? Ringo and Jackson. We'll learn that in July and August. But as I was saying before, they could do whatever they want because they got Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave at tight end. So they're super deep pass target group. If you had a more aggressive play caller, because Matt LaFleur, the head coach, calls the plays, this offense would be better. I'm just telling you. Now, the question is with Jordan Love, very inconsistent last season. He's super gifted. The Eagles have faced him before. They know him very well. Which Jordan Love's going to show up? And we're going to learn early in the season. And Malik Willis is his backup. Although Sean Clifford, we'll see if they open it up to let Penn State Sean Clifford compete for that 2 job. But the bottom line is they've got a lot of talent. They should be better in offense than they are. They're very gifted. The offensive line's not great. It's okay. Rasheed Walker, who's been a good story development considering he was a 7th-round pick in 2022. Now, they drafted Anthony Belton, presumably to be the long-term solution at left tackle. Aaron Banks will play left guard. Comes over from the Niners. Jenkins has played left tackle. He's played guard. He's now going to play center. Zach Tom, who's been a good story, no question at the right tackle. It's an okay line. It's not great. It's very beatable. Eagles defensive line should do very well against this offensive line, but if you can't get on Jordan Love with his pass target group, if Matt LaFleur ever gets out of his comfort zone and actually tries to be aggressive coming out and throwing the football and stop trying to be balanced, this could be a game when the Eagles play them in Week 10 that could present them some problems. Now, let's look at their defense. Jeff Hafley's in his second year. Now, I know a lot of people said, oh, Jeff Hafley is an aggressive play caller. One of the lowest man coverage teams in the NFL, less than 20%, 19% man coverage, blitz rate very low. Everyone was talking about how aggressive he would be. Second lowest blitz rate at 17%. Look, that's okay if you can get to the quarterback. I see a team, a defense that's very talented, and this is another defense. Why don't they win in the playoffs? There's just something missing from this team. Rashawn Gary's a good football player. He recovered from his injury very well. Now, I should tell you, Lucas Van Ness was drafted for a 34 front. They play a 43 in our Hafley. First time they played, last year was the first time they played a 43 front in well over a decade. So Van Ness is a guy caught without a scheme. He's not a good fit for a 43 front. It's just not working for them at all. So what they're going to do on their front is, because they moved on from T.J. Slayton, who signed in free agency with the Bengals, they'll go with Devontae Wyatt most likely as a full-time player, as a full-time starter. Wyatt was a 2022 first-round pick. So look, and Kenny Clark's phenomenal. It was just, man, this guy's still getting it done. A first-rounder in 2016 for the Packers. Great story of development. So the front is talented, but it's not a high-end front. And their linebackers, Quay Walker, Edgerrin Cooper, and Isaiah McDuffie, who the Eagles know well. They saw him in Week 1 last year. So Cooper should be a full-time starter. He's very, very gifted. Came on late last season. So this is a really good group. Now, the secondary is where they have questions. If you could protect, you could throw against these guys. I like the safety group. McKinney's really good. He rebuilt his career with the Packers, no question about it. And Evan Williams was a good story of development last year when healthy. But the cornerback group, now, they cut Alexander. Everybody knows that. He signed with Baltimore, who's their most talented corner. And Keyshawn Nixon, I got to give this guy credit. One of the better special teams returners in the league. He's become a good corner, better than you think. If you're not watching him, from what I'm told, he's actually been well above average. Nate Hobbs, one of my favorite players in the league since he came in with the Raiders. A guy that a lot of people thought could only play inside. And he's out of Illinois, by the way. He can play nickel. He can play outside. My sense is he's got to play outside here because they're just not good enough on the outside. Carrington Valentine's there, who's a third-round corner, seventh-rounder in 2023. This is a very beatable group. Hobbs is good. He's had a lot of injuries. He's very competitive. Talking to people with the Raiders about him. In fact, I remember when teams called the Raiders a couple years ago for him at trade deadline. The Raiders said, we're not trading him. They told teams who called, we're not trading him. So he's very gifted, but this is a team that you could throw against. Now, we know the Eagles, last year at least, were heavy 12 personnel because they had Barkley. But if it's not working with their run game against the Packers and they feel that they could spread it out, I would absolutely do that and get, obviously, Dotson the Eagles their receiver. So that's a fun matchup. Obviously, both teams know each other very, very well. That game is, again, in Week 10 at Green Bay. November 10th, by the way, on a Monday night at 8:15 Eastern. Looking forward to that one. All right, let's get to this next one. And to a team that was my breakout team 3 years ago, but I'm moving off the lines a little bit. I think they're a little bit overrated. Let me get into some of the issues that they have. This game in Week 11 is at home. Eagles will host this one. It's on Sunday Night Football, November 16th. Boy, the Lions are coming off of a tough schedule. Week 5 at the Bengals. Week 6 at the Chiefs. The next week after that, they host the Bucks. Then they have a bye in Week 9. They host the Vikings. Hey, if McCarthy's the real deal, they're going to be really good. And they play at Washington the following week. That is a gauntlet of a schedule. Now, offensively, we know Ben Johnson is no longer the offense coordinator. He has moved on to be the Bears head coach. John Morton, who was once the Jets offense coordinator, didn't go well for him. He was not brought back after, I believe, 1 year. He's more or less, and I know he's coached at USC, but talking to someone who's coached with him before, he runs a lot of Sean Payton's concepts, which means you'll see a lot of 11 and 12 personnel. Ben Johnson, and we'll talk about him later in the show. Ben Johnson did both with the Lions. John Morton could do both. He's an experienced guy, been around the league a long time. He's a good coach, but let's see what he learned from his time with the Jets. But the bottom line is, when you look at the Lions here, if they could protect, because you know that Jared Goff cannot move very well, but if you could protect, you got Jameson Williams, who's on the final year of his rookie deal. Although they picked up his fifth-year option. He's super explosive. He looked pretty good last year. Needs to be more consistent, but he looked great. Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the best possession receivers in the National Football League. Super gifted player. Tim Patrick, who's overcome major injuries, he could still play. They brought him back. And they've got, it's funny, the kid that they drafted from Arkansas, Isaac, I don't know how you say his name, T-E-S-L-A-A, Tesla. I had a receivers coach tell me that he gave him a 6th-round grade, and the Lions took him in the 3rd. So we'll see if Brad Holmes is terrific. He's one of the better, probably top 3 GM. He's usually right, but they're not really deep at receiver. But with Laporta back, Brock Wright's their Y. They could go to 11 and 12 personnel how they want to do it. Now they've had pretty significant changes on their offensive line. Frank Ragnow retired. Tate Ratledge will replace him. And then Kevin Zeitler, their left guard, signed with the Titans. Christian Mahogany, the 6th-rounder last year, is a first-time starter. They did draft Miles Frazier. So they've got 2 changes on the interior of their offensive line. Graham Glasgow is getting up there, folks. Glasgow turns 33 soon. So this offensive line, we know that Sewell's elite. And Decker's still solid, but they've got some big changes on the interior of their line. This is where Jalen Carter could eat. This is where the Eagles have an advantage. And they're in the Lions interior OL versus the Eagles defensive line interior. So that's one matchup that we'll certainly look at. And by the way, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, for those of you who thought this was ridiculous, why would they draft Gibbs in the 1st round when they have Montgomery? Now you see why. This 1-2 punch is phenomenal, but Ben Johnson not calling the plays anymore, that's where you wonder, does John Morton have a good feel for those players? I know that Morton's been there for a couple of years, so he knew Ben Johnson, he worked under him, but play calling's an art, folks. It's not easy. So those are the guys that you have to be aware of, and I know that Zach Bond graded out as elite, I'm told, as a coverage player. Bond's got elite size and movement, but it's not easy covering Jahmyr Gibbs. And by the way, he's way stronger than you think. Super explosive and got better size than you think. And obviously, Montgomery's the banger of the two of in terms of the power game. So that's look. It's a dynamically talented offense. It's just that the going from Ben Johnson to John Morton is certainly going to raise some eyebrows a little bit. Let's get to the defense. Yet another new coordinator, Kelvin Shepard. You might remember him with the Giants and the Dolphins as a linebacker. He's the Lions' former linebackers coach. He's now their defensive coordinator. Moving on, he takes over for Aaron Glenn, who's now the Jets head coach. Now they run a 34 front. My understanding is they're going to keep it relatively the same. So they run an odd man front. The Eagles have seen plenty of odd man fronts. The question is for the Lions. We know the Eagles have the best offensive line in football. Where are they getting their pass rush? They re-signed Marcus Davenport, which surprises me. The guy's been nothing but disappointing. Talented, but always hurt. Too many injuries. He never, remember what the Saints gave up to trade up to get him? It never worked out. He moved on to the Lions. And Brad Holmes brought him back. Now they're going to have they believe is a healthy Aiden Hutchinson. Lee McNeil coming off the ACL. Really dynamic nose tackle. Their interior defensive lineman when healthy. Tyleik Williams was their 1st-round defensive tackle, so they're going to be good on the interior. The question is where they get in a pass rush. Davenport, you don't know how much he could play. You don't know how much he could contribute. We know Hutchinson can in a big way. But that's really it, folks. Al-Quadin Muhammad is a nice backup player, not a high-end edge rusher. The kid that they drafted in the 6th round from Boise, Hassanine, he's a late round pick. So you just don't know about this pass rush. I've got real questions about their pass rush, which we had questions last year with them. Brad Holmes is phenomenal, but he needs to understand you got to win by getting upfield. I heard what he talked about being strong in the interior. I totally agree with that. But Josh Pascal could rush the passer, but he's not. We're their elite, big time, high end pass rushers. That's my issue with them. Now, the cornerback group is one where there are questions. They lost Carlton Davis, who signed with the Patriots, signed for a big number there. They play a ton of man coverage, highest man coverage in the National Football League, 45% man coverage, one of the highest blitz rates in the National Football League at 35%. Now, you would think Kelvin Shepherd will keep it relatively the same. That's, to be honest with you, that's the way I see it. But when you look at this group here, there are questions. Terrion Arnold, up and down rookie season. DJ Reed's a good number 2 corner, really good. But he's changing teams here, different scheme. Avonte Maddox will play safety or nickel for them. Amik Robertson's a pretty good nickel. They're phenomenal at safety. Branch and Kirby Joseph is awesome, huge contract, highest paid safety in NFL history. Brian Branch, I'm told, could, if they needed to play outside corner or corner, he can play it. Now, Ennis Rakestraw didn't really contribute much last season. Here's the thing. They have plenty of players at corner. Where's your ace corner there? That's what they have to prove. We know they're elite at safety. And at inside backer, Anzalone's been an overachiever, good football player. And Jack Campbell, big-time leader in his 3rd year. He's not quite up to the hype yet. And they have, by the way, former Eagle and Bronco and Texan and Titan Zach Cunningham is there, if you didn't know that. And Rodrigo, as Dan Campbell calls him, Rodrigo's coming off a major injury, Malcolm Rodriguez, so he's there. So, look, there's plenty of talent on this defense, and DJ Reader's still there at nose tackle. But the bottom line is there's talent here. I don't know if they can get the passer. I don't know if they could rush the passer enough because coverage and pressure, they've got to connect. I just don't know if they're going to have that kind of connection to being an elite football team. They're going to win the division. They're going to be very good. I don't see them as a Super Bowl team. I'm just going to be honest with you. But they're a fun team to watch. And look, they're going to have a lot of questions because, folks, when you have 2 new coordinators, we know the Eagles did it. They had 2 new coordinators last year and they won the Super Bowl. That's a big deal. But when you look at it, the Lions have a first-time defensive coordinator. That's the difference there. So that's the first 2 games for the Eagles here coming out of the bye.
Sky Motorcars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter makes sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motorcars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motorcars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorcars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, Week 13 at Dallas. This is a Sunday afternoon game at Dallas. Big D, but I hate that stadium, AT&T. It's too big. I was there for the Super Bowl. The Packers-Steelers one, I think that was the one. I mean, it's cool how big it is, but it's kind of like, it is loud, but it doesn't feel like a great home field advantage, to be honest with you. And of course, the Eagles have, in Week 1, they played against the Cowboys to open up on Thursday. The Cowboys played the previous week at the Raiders on Monday Night Football. So, by the way, they're on a short week. Not super far travel, but hey, after this game, listen to the Cowboys schedule, folks. The next week, they host the Chiefs. The next week after that, at the Lions. Then they host the Vikings. Then they host the Chargers. And at the Commandos. And we're going to know well before this game how good of a job Brian Schottenheimer is doing and how much they're buying in, and Schotty calling the plays here. Offensively, just a couple notes. The backup quarterback, they're expecting to be Joe Milton. Joe Milton has an unbelievable arm strength. I know the media kind of went, oh, wow, he had a great offseason, folks. You can't get bought by the arm strength. There's a reason why the team that drafted him didn't want him, the Patriots. They moved on from him very quick. So let's just see what happens. But he's got talent. He's got a big arm. He's got good size. I know everyone's pointing to Javonte Williams. Hopefully he wins the starting job. He probably will be their starter. Miles Sanders probably will be his backup. But Jadon Blue, fifth rounder of Texas, is super explosive. He's a much lowercase, as one personnel executive told me, much lowercase Jahmyr Gibbs. He's smaller physically, but he's explosive. And of course, the trade for George Pickens, as we talked about a couple shows ago when we did the schedule show. Let's see how he handles himself with this new coaching staff. Tyler Booker is going to be a first-year starter, a rookie, first-round pick. And they lost Brandon Cooks, but they're going to be. You can expect heavy 11 personnel this season, no question about that. Shoddy is a good play caller, but I'm interested to see what he's done since he was the play caller for Seattle when they went heavy 12, when they didn't have really good heavy 11, when they didn't have good backup receivers, but he still put him out there, which is bold, and he did a great job until Pete Carroll kind of micromanaged him. Defensively, Matt Eberflus, as we talked about in a couple shows ago on our schedule show, 43 front, lots of zone. What's interesting is that under Mike Zimmer last season, they played more man coverage, 31% man coverage. Chicago with Eberflus only played 70% man coverage. Blitz rate in Chicago, 24%. Blitz rate last year under Zim, 30%. So you're going to see a more conservative defense. Rush 4, don't blitz a lot, got to get home. Ezaraku, who we liked at Inside the Birds a lot. Second-round pick, should be one of the first edge rushers off the bench. It's Parsons, it's Dante Fowler, who they know. They brought him back from Washington. Marshawn Nealon, Ezaraku, and Sam Williams coming off injury. So they're loaded there. Oso Digizua, who's terrific, number 97, who got his big contract extension, but they have not got enough out of Mozzie Smith. The Eagles, look, there are going to be some moments in each of these times that they play Dallas that Dallas might win up front. But overall, Eagles are still have the best offensive line. By the way, Peyton Turner's there as well, who's unfortunately a former first-round pick who's been hurt. Just not he's super long, but not explosive. But he's more of a rundown guy. So this is a good battle. The Dallas front versus the Eagles elite offensive line. They're pretty weak at linebacker overall. They don't know when Overshown's going to be ready. He's had so many injuries. It's such a shame. Third rounder in 2023. Kenneth Murray's been such a disappointment. They got him for a ham sandwich from Tennessee. Got him for a seventh rounder. Jack Sanborn, wouldn't shock me at all if Sanborn wind up winning the job. They got to figure this out. Look, and Dallas has been terrible against the run. We know that's going to be all about Barkley in the matchups. And the other thing is, look, they're not good at corner. Kaiir Elam is a man cover corner. He was in college. He didn't fit with Buffalo, who plays a lot of zone. Eberflus plays a lot of zone. Dron Bland, you could play him at nickel. You could play him outside. Trevon Diggs coming off a follow-up on his ACL surgery. And Siobhan Revel, he's coming off ACL surgery. And the Dallas Cowboys team doctor did the surgery, and Andrew Booth, who they acquired last year from a trade, that didn't work out for Minnesota. He was a second rounder for the Vikings. They're not good at corner, good at safety with Hooker and Wilson. This defense is upside, but they have a ton of question marks. The Eagles are clearly way better than them. The thing with Dallas is they've got the talent, but something seems to always happen. Can Matt Eberflus get them to play more disciplined? He's been with Dallas before, by the way, so they know him in that building. We'll see what happens, but this is the fun matchup. But the one I cannot wait for is in Week 13. The Eagles will host on a Friday. Yes, on Black Friday. This is, to me, we'll see how Ben Johnson, if there's a good buy-in from him. Ben Johnson will call the plays, their new head coach. This team is so fun. This game is on November 28th, Black Friday, at 3 Eastern. And this will be a streak of 3 out of the last 4 games versus the NFC North, which is kind of, that's an odd deal there with the schedule makers. But here's what you're looking at. Talk about a team that's completely changed their offensive line. So it's Joe Tooney who's going to be back at guard. He was miscast. The Eagles embarrassed him in the Super Bowl at left tackle. It's not his fault. He's a guard. Drew Dahlman comes over from Atlanta. Jonah Jackson came from the trade with the Rams. It didn't work out. He lost his job there. He'll be the right guard. Darnell Wright, a first rounder 2 years ago, is the right tackle. The question is, could Ozzie Trapilo their second rounder beat out Braxton Jones to be the left tackle. So they've completely revamped it. It's going to look different. And I'm telling you, folks, if Ben Johnson, by the way, listen to this pass starter group that they have. DJ Moore is really good. Roma Dunze will be a first-year starter. Keenan Allen's not back. Olamide Zaccheaus did a good job for Washington last season. He'll be a backup. Luther Burden, who fell to the second round, what I was told from some personnel people is not a great route runner, not as good as the draftniks think he was. Needs to be better, bring more energy when the ball's not to him, I was told, which I thought was interesting. So again, there's a reason why a guy like that who's super gifted drops to the second round. Tyler Scott, by the way, a third-year receiver, a fourth rounder 2 years ago. He could run. So they're loaded there. And listen to this tight end group. Colston Loveland, who that was a surprise that the Bears drafted him in the first round. We know how gifted he is out of Michigan. Cole Kmet, who's one of the better wide tight ends in the NFL, is an athletic wide. Durham Smythe, who could play inside, who's cut by Miami. He's a wide tight end. So, folks, Ben Johnson could do whatever he wants. A lot of 11, a lot of 12. This presents a lot of problems for the Eagles, but the Eagles' defensive line should be able to eat against this offensive line. This is a great matchup. And if I'm Ben Johnson, you see the Eagles' weakness opposite Quinyon Mitchell. I'm going after their secondary. Like this is a game where the Eagles have to win up front, or it could be a closer game than you think. Because look at this pass target group, and at running back, DeAndre Swift, who they obviously know, Roshan Johnson will be their goal line back. It'll help them on third downs when they need it. So, and then of course Caleb Williams is the quarterback, and he's got to improve on his mechanics, footwork, timing. And Ben Johnson's going to coach him up hard. He's going to get hard coaching. Case Keenum will be the backup. So this is a really fun offense defensively. Now, this is going to be interesting. This scheme under Declan Doyle. Well, actually, it's really. I'm sorry. Doyle's their pseudo offense coordinator. Ben Johnson called the plays. I'm sorry. It's Dennis Allen, who's the defense coordinator. He runs a 43 front. So DA is a guy who will blitz. He's not afraid to do it. Their pass rush group is Montez Sweat, is a power rusher. Deo and Digbo came up from the Colts, a very underrated rusher. Austin Booker was a nice story development of terms of their preseason last year in training camp, who made it out of Kansas. But it's not a great group. This is a group the Eagles should have no problem with. Grady Jarrett comes over, cut from the Falcons. Andrew Billings is there. Shamar Turner is there, second rounder of Texas A&M. And Dexter, this is a pretty good group. It was a second rounder 2 years ago. They got good depth. They'll have a good rotation. But you know what? It's one the Eagles will be able to handle. It's going to be a fun situation to see. Dennis Allen could be aggressive. A linebacker, we know they're really good with T.J. Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. Secondary, this is where there's some questions. We know Jalen Johnson's really good. The other corner is where they've got problems. Because Tyreek Stevenson, not consistent. He's a third-round player, second rounder 2 years ago. They got to kind of figure it out opposite Jalen Johnson. Tyler Gordon's a really good nickel. And Byard, the problem with him was when the Eagles traded for him, this is when the Eagles were having problems 2 years ago with the coaching staff, and it just didn't work out. The Eagles wound up cutting him. He revived his career really there, and then hopefully Juwan Prisker has no more problems with concussions, man. It's very scary what happened to him last year. So we wish him very, very well. So this is a fun matchup. The Eagles, again, are clearly the better team. I look forward to this one, no doubt about it. Ben Johnson's really, really good. An elite play caller, but can they protect against the Eagles? This is going to be a fun stretch for the Eagles. And then lastly, when you look at the final group, which we'll talk about on the next show, as we run up this scheduled show for the Eagles, the final group of games for the Eagles are as follows. They're at the Chargers, they host the Raiders, and this is the craziness of the schedule. The game December 20th, the time is not determined. It's at Washington. Wow. At Buffalo on December 28th, 8 days later, and then home on January 4th against Washington. So that is going to be fun. Now, that is a brutal stretch. Obviously, the Raiders shouldn't be very good. But At SoFi, they know that stadium. And then they play the Commandos twice, 2 out of the final 3 weeks. That is going to be very, very challenging. All right. Enjoyed it. We'll talk to you on the next one. Stay tuned.
Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.